Welcome to the chapter 11 of the discussion today, which is on managing misbehavior in the workplace. Now, till now we have studied attitudes in the workplace, and we have studied many of the positive attitudes that which are like preferred attitudes in the workplace, and behaviors like job satisfaction, organizational commitment. We have discussed about job involvement, engagement, organizational citizenship behavior. These are desired behaviors and attitudes in the organizational context. But as the organizations are becoming more complex today, with diverse groups of people with diversity in their interests are coming and interacting with each other, the organization itself is functioning in a very competitive environment, and it is taking many policies as a part of its strategic decision making, which are sometimes able to answer to the needs of the employees within the organization, but sometimes they are not able to answer to the needs of the people within the organization. All this dynamicity in the environment of the organization, with mixed with, like when it gets coupled with the difference in the interests and aspirations of the people joining in the organization, sometimes what gives rise to is a situation where we get to see many misbehaviors in the organization. Today we are going to discuss some of those misbehaviors which happens in the organization, because as an OB practitioner and as a manager, it's very important to know like why this misbehaviors takes place in the organization, and what are the different types of misbehaviors, and like what could be the managerial intervention, and like when that intervention can be done, so that what we get is again a proper behavior in the organization. So it's very important to focus on these misbehaviors in the organization. So today the objectives of today's lecture is to develop an understanding of the emergence in the management of the study of misbehavior and some selected misbehaviors. Now, when we are trying to define what is misbehavior, and in the context of OB, it is like it is said to involve, like if you can see, any intentional act by the members of an organization, so that defies and violates shared organizational norms and expectations, and or the core values, societal values, mores and standards of proper conduct. So the when you're talking of misbehavior in the workplace, the word intention is very important. So it's something which people purposefully do, intentionally they do that behavior to violate or defy some set organizational rules and standards, and also set standards of good conduct and proper behavior as set by the societal norms and values and mores, etc. So this they may do for various, these intentions could be of various reasons, like bringing it could be like it could be like bringing harm to someone, or it could be purely to satisfy one's own need or the interest of the organization per se for which the employee is working. So intentions could vary, but it's an intentional act and which defies the set rules and norms. Sorry. So Worthy and Weiner, they divided misbehavior into like 3 categories, that is to benefit the self, to benefit the members employing organization as a whole and to inflict damage. So, when we are talking of to benefit the self, it is purely for like selfish purpose, and when you are talking of like the benefit the members employing organization, sometimes it happens like the managers do sometimes encourage this type of behaviors. We will discuss this in the latter part of the discussions, today's discussion. And sometimes it is inflicting damage, this inflicting damage could be to another person, could be to the group as a whole or as an organization as a whole. So, the target could vary, but the intentions are of this three nature. Ackroyd and Thompson in 1999 they defined misbehavior as in a very simple term as anything that you do in work which you are not supposed to do, but this is it's a too simple a definition. So, what they try to again study in details and portray is it's a range of conflicts which may arise between an employer and employee regarding various issues like the time of work, the what you do as a what you produce as a product, the type of work that you have to do, and the identity that you get from the job. So, these could be the various issues regarding which people may have a conflict, but the range of conflict could be from this regarding these four different issues. And the intensity of that conflict could be from commitment to hostility, where people try to verbally or physically be hostile to the target. So, which is really a matter of concern for the organization. So, it is due to the fact that it involves employees seeking to carve out of autonomy in the face of confining or work practices. So, they seek to make a place for themselves, they seek autonomy in the organization. That is why they want to be known in the organization. So, this misbehavior, this could arise from the need for seeking attention also. Like if you are not getting recognized otherwise, what you do if you misbehave in the organization, then you get noticed. So, this could be another way of seeking the attention also. So, reasons may vary, but it is for people want autonomy from the work behavior, they want attention, and that is why sometimes they do misbehave. For each of the misbehavior, then we have to find out the exact reason why a person is misbehaving in certain ways. So, excluded acts in this will include whistleblowing and serious organizational fraud. These are not within this range of what we call misbehavior as discussed by Thompson. Thompson and Newsom, they stated misbehavior to be anything other than organized and conscious collective action by labor as a wider class agent. So, if it is an organized effort and conscious collective action, so this is not generally taken to be a misbehavior. So, Watson presented a further definition which he calls to be an organizational mischief and under that it was classified as activities occurring within the workspace, that according to the official structure, culture and the rules of the organization, it should not happen. And also it takes some more of challenge to the dominant modes of operating, or to dominant modes of operating, or to the dominant interest of the organization. So, if you are challenging a setup, if you are challenging a set of values, culture, rules and mores, then all these activities are which are not supposed to happen within the organization. These are classified as mischiefs in the organization. Now, in this model, we are going to consider the whole mechanism of how your misbehavior happens in the organization, and what are the antecedents, mediators, outcomes and costs of misbehavior in the organization. So, from the left hand side you can see there are 4 different antecedents of which may give may give rise to misbehavior in the organization. So, we will visit each of these antecedents separately. Like when first under individual, it is classified as values, attitudes, personality, emotion and stress. So, these individual variables, when they are like each individual comes to the organization with predetermined their own personal value systems. They have formed their own attitudes towards life, or towards the organization, or towards to the group with which they are working. They have their own personality pattern and set of emotions, which could be again positive and negative affectivity, and they are functioning under their own level of stress. All these factors may color the perception of the individual towards the organizational norms and values and mores, which they may find like which are matching with their own personal variables, like attitudes, values, then emotions and personality, but which they may see like it's not matching. But again, all people who find this match or mismatch are not like prone to misbehave. So, it again depends on the personality pattern of the individual. Like even if there is a mismatch, who are going to misbehave and who are maybe not going to misbehave, but remain within the organizational set norms and try to work in that. So, it depends on the personality pattern who is going to do what. Next, like when you are talking of the job variables, in the job, the task identity, task variety, task significance, the characteristics of the job itself gives some people autonomy for choosing the work process, or autonomy for decision making and knowing about the feedback. So, these we have already described in the job descriptive index JDI, and what happens, like it gives rise to certain sort of person's identity with the job, whether they can identify with the job or not, whether they develop certain emotions to the job or not. So, based on all these factors, what comes along with it are emotions and stress from performing that job, whether that job is described properly, whether role clarity is there or not. All these factors matter, whether people feel certain positive or negative emotions towards the job, and whether the job itself appears stressful to the individual or not. Next, we have certain organizational factors like the strategy of the organization, the goals that the organization has set for itself, the culture of the organization. So, the history of the organization, what are the systems that are in place to convert the strategy into action, and how much importance ethics is given in the organization. So, all this again will try to have an effect on the whether some misbehavior is happening in the organization or not, what are the how much strong the rules are in the organization, and what is the expectation of the organization to abide by the norms, strict norms set by the organization, or there is certain flexibility in the organization also. What policies does the organization takes, and what is the general practice of the organization to transform the strategy into its actions. So whatever it's observed by the employees within the organization about the organization's own way of doing things will have a definite reflection on what the employee will decide to do, which path to follow in the organization. So these are organization's own ethical concerns will definitely have a reflection on the employees choosing their own path for positive behavior or misbehavior in the organization, based on what consequences are going to follow if they are misbehaving, or there is a tolerance mode in the organization for misbehavior. So that is going to definitely define the intensity of the misbehavior. Next, when you're talking of groups again, norms, the way the group is developed, cohesiveness, leadership, all these will have an effect on the misbehaviors. Similarly, like the organization, whether the group norm is very strong or not, what are the outcomes of not following the group norms, then whether there is a good cohesiveness within the group, how the groups are getting formed, what is the leadership qualities, all these will determine whether there is a what is the force of the norm, what is the expectation of the group from the members within the group, and how strictly they should follow those norms or not. So these antecedents will give rise to certain normative forces within the organization, which are organizational pressures and expectations. Now, these normative force, along with the instrumental force, that is the individual's personal interest and belief, if they are not matching with that normative force, or if it appears too much for the individual to take in the pressure and expectations from the organization, what happens is an intention to misbehave in the organization. And this intention to misbehave in the organization then leads to certain outcomes in the organization. These outcomes are in the form of different misbehaviors that happens in the organization, which are again at which again happens at different levels. Like first is the interpersonal misbehavior. So this is first starting with like sexual harassment, then violence, then discrimination and bullying. Next comes the intrapersonal misbehavior, which leads to like fraud and substance abuse. Third, we come to get certain misbehaviors which fall in the domain of performance misbehaviors. And performance misbehaviors are like cyber slacking, social loafing and absenteeism. Property misbehavior are theft, sabotage and espionage. Political misbehaviors are impression management and favoritism. We will discuss some of these misbehaviors in details, like in the lecture now, but we will try to discuss some of these misbehaviors in details. All these will lead to all this will lead to certain outcome. These outcomes will definitely have certain costs for the organization, and these costs are in the terms of like financial cost for the organization, like reduced productivity, lawsuits, loss of image, and your social consequences like mental and physical injuries and job satisfaction. And the two arrows that you see, this will have an like effect, one will have the effect on the other. Now these are the if you see, like these are the costs that happens out of this misbehavior, and leading to again certain, again it will have a back arrow, and this will have again try to influence the antecedents. Now to take certain interventions which are called management interventions, where we find like management interventions could be at level A, B or C. When you're talking of this, if you see like management interventions could be a focus on antecedents by like selection, education and training. So what we try to do through the selection process, we try to select those individuals only who are less prone to misbehave in the organization. Through education and training, what we try to do is we try to make people understand the expectations from the organization and train them to live up to the expectations of the organizations, and the group and the job, and follow the norms. So these will act at the level of A and B. Now what happens, like if these actually acts as a preventive mode to face the misbehaviors in the organization. But if it already has happened, then the management intervention is to focus on the outcome, where we try to be we are in the reactive mode, where misbehavior has already happened, and we try to take certain corrective actions through certain exemplary decisions taken, which will tell people, okay, these if you do these type of behaviors, then this is what you face from the management. Now these could be like outcomes could be your suspensions, your employee assistance programs, could be termination, or sometimes if the organization supports it, it could be sanction also. So this works on the point C, where it tries to have an effect on the outcome. And again, the consequence that happens out of this social and financial consequences, that the cost that is faced by the organization and the employee per se, will again influence the interventions taken by the management. So that if we really want to prevent misbehavior in the organization, then we have to be very careful about the antecedents, and so that we do not let it happen at all, and check it at the first instance. So focus on the antecedents, knowing people needs, aspirations, what they want from the organization while we are going for target setting, when we are going for job designing, like when you are going to make people members of the team, to know like how they interact with each other, what are the expectations of the group, whether the targets set are too high or not. These are certain things that we need to focus on to prevent misbehavior from happening in the organization. Samples of some misbehaviors in the organization, it's like almost everything from A to W, like every more or less every alphabet has a misbehavior attached to it, like arson, blackmail, bribery, bullying, cheating, discrimination, dishonesty, espionage, fraud, incivility, intimidation, kickbacks, lying, misinformation, privacy violation, revenge, sabotage, sexual harassment, substance abuse, theft, threats, whistleblowing, withholding information. So what as within the scope of 1 hour lecture, it's really not possible to discuss about all the misbehaviors that has been listed over here. What we'll try to do is we'll try to discuss some of the important misbehaviors as seen in the workplace. And first, of course, is over to like sexual harassment, where this misbehavior takes the form of unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature, when like a submission to or rejection of such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of an individual's employment. Submission to or rejection of such a conduct by an individual is used as the basis for employment decisions affecting the individual. Or C, such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile or offensive work environment. So here the responsibility of the organization is to provide a platform for the woman to speak up about the harassment that they are facing in the organization, either from the colleagues or from the boss. So, and the organization should have a system in place where they can report about these harassments. Otherwise, what happens in some cases where this harassment is faced by the woman from the bosses, due to the fear of losing the job, and otherwise people do not report, or due to the fact like what others will think, feel about this. And because there is a very uh, thin line of separation also, like when you're talking of workplace romance and also sexual harassment faced in the workplace. So the judgment decision making is like we have to be very clear in our decision making judgments, and you get given avenue for the woman to report about the if she faces any uncomfortable situation in the organization without any fear like this will be a threat to her. But again, it's a sometimes though the system is in place, we should also try to educate the lady, like whenever she faces the instance, maybe first instance should be reported, otherwise what happens, it may be like the whole situation may come up that because till now she was getting certain favors from the boss and which was a part of the maybe workplace romance, because intentions were not fulfilled, now she is reporting to be a case of sexual harassment. So these things should be like reported at the first instance, either to some of the colleagues, or so that people know like these things are happening. If you just go and complain when it reaches the extreme point, then maybe, but if there is no consequent reporting, like then sometimes the you do not get justice from the organization. So because these are very fine touchy issues to be discussed, and organization has to decide the case like with lot of deciding about the pros and cons. And sometimes what happens, like if these things move to the courts and all these things, it means really a it really puts a black image on the black spot on the image of the organization, and also the career of the person who is being reported against. So people should be, it's actually should be a very responsible act on both the parties to see like these things doesn't happen in the organization, because it really means a lot for the organizational image, the person's image who has been reported against. And also definitely it's creates a lot of stress on the part of the woman who faces these type of situations in the organization, if exactly no support is given to her from the organization side. So all the parties involved before like going for these type of behaviors should be acting very responsibly in the organization. Aggression and violence. The word aggression is used to describe many forms of behavior. So aggression at work is the effort of an individual to inflict harm on others with whom the person has worked for or works for currently in the organization itself. The attempt to bring harm is of course intentional, and it leads to both psychological as well as physical injury. Now this harm, as discussed over here, like it's an intention to inflict harm on others. This harm could be both like physical in nature or verbal in nature. Again, the harm could be the direct harm, it could be indirect harm also. Based on that classification, there is a broad classification of aggressive behaviors in the workplace. So, like these categorizations could be, as discussed, be along physical, verbal, active, passive, direct and indirect dimensions. So, physical attacks, as we all know, it could involve an attack with fist, pushing and slapping or a weapon. Verbal aggression is inflicted by words, gossip, etc. So, again, active aggression brings harm through a specific behavior, while passive aggression is accomplished through withholding certain types of desired behavior like praise, information, resources, etc. So, if you can see from here, this is a whole matrix drawn on the dimensions of aggressive behavior, like physical and verbal dimension, active passive dimension, direct and indirect dimension. So, aggressive behaviors which are physical, active and direct in nature are homicide, assault, sexual assault, like dirty looks, interrupting others, obscene gestures. Physical, active but indirect in nature are theft, sabotage, defacing property, consuming needed resources. Physical but passive in nature, but again direct, are intentional work slowdowns, refusing to provide needed resources, leaving the area when target enters, preventing target from expressing self. Physical, passive but again indirect in nature are showing up late for meetings, delaying work to make target look bad, failing to protect the target's welfare, causing others to delay action. When we are talking of verbal active in nature, which are again direct, like threats, yelling, sexual harassments, insults and sarcasm, flaunting status, unfair performance evaluation. And verbal active but indirect in nature are spreading rumors, whistleblowing, talking behind target's back, belittling opinions, attacking protege, transmitting damaging information. Verbal, passive in nature but again direct, are failing to return phone calls, giving target the silent treatment, damning with faint praise, refusing target's requests. Verbal, passive, which is indirect in nature, are failing to transmit information, failing to deny false rumors, failing to defend target, failing to warn of impending danger. So, what we find over here is either we show very actively and in direct ways our aggression towards others or towards the target in the workplace, or people take some indirect ways of expressing aggression, either by withholding certain information, withholding certain resources, or expressing aggression even to the target, even through others, by not letting them perform for the welfare of the target. So, it could be of various natures in the organization. Bullying is a repeated actions that are directed to another worker which are unwanted, which may be done deliberately or unconsciously, but which cause humiliation. So, researchers have mainly found that many victims perceive envy as the reason for the hostility directed at them. They also have inadequate coping styles, they are introverts and have low self-esteem. So, other people have found like overachievers are bullied more frequently than average performers. So, what happens, like out of envy, sometimes people make targets to target for bullying the other person, and overachievers sometimes get bullied, so that if they are performing above the group norms, then they are bullied, and so what happens, they will become stressful, feel like why I'm being treated in this way, and their performance level will drop, and to a certain extent they will be at par with the other performers in the group. So this again happens from the like theory of equity in the organization, like, and the set norms of the group, and whether somebody is performing more than what is expected. So if somebody is performing more than what is the set group norm, then what happens, the group standards will also rise, and the other people, even if they are unwilling to perform more, they will have to perform more. So what happens, by bullying the overachiever, he is tried to be pulled down in the level of the others. The other persons who are also introverted in nature, because they cannot mix with the other group members, or they have a sense of lower self-esteem, they are somewhat quiet, they are bullied, and the other people out of envy does that, so that they get some sort of satisfaction by mistreating this person who is not able to mix with others in the group. So the targets of bullying could be different people in the organization. Workplace incivility. In workplace incivility, what happens, it involves acting rudely, discourteously, or in a demeaning manner towards others. It is on the low end of the continuum of abuse. Incivility is not violence or harassment, but it is a sense of lack of respect for others. Incivility appears to be on the increase both inside and outside the workplace. So, like when we start to speak with others, the sense we do not try to respect the other person and give the proper dignity what is there, and that, like while talking in front or also while talking at the back when the person is not there, and this may express the feeling of like disrespect that we may, or envy that we may have for the person, because the other person is having a better grade in the organization, or is a better performer, or being recognized in the organization, or the person who sometimes a person addresses the person lower in rank with not with proper dignity and respect, to show the status that person is in the organization. So again, reasons could be varied, source could be varied, but incivility, workplace incivility means like not treating with respect the other person with whom we are talking to or interacting. fraud is defined as the intentional act of deceiving or misrepresenting in order to induce another individual or group to give up something of value. So, fraud is a combination of motive and opportunity. So, the opportunity to commit fraud is typically through internal control systems. So, what we do over here as a part of fraud is to harm others, like we try to block the other persons from reaching a goal by misrepresenting certain facts and figures, and by the act of deceiving which prevents the other person to reach the target or goal or fulfill his set targets in the organization, his or her set targets in the organization. So, again, the opportunity to commit fraud definitely depends on the organization's internal control system. If it is loose, there is no vigilance as such, there is no system in place to keep a check on what each person is doing systematically, like again periodically constant check is there, then opportunity may be there to fraud in the organization. Substance abuse at work is leading to loss of productivity, premature and preventable health problems, increased workers' compensation claims, and behavioral problems. In substance abuse, what people do is become addicted to either drugs or alcohol, and these are the major two problems faced in the workplace, specifically alcoholism, which leads to loss of productivity and health problems and absenteeism, and organization has to take care mainly in this regards. So, sending people for rehabilitation and keeping a constant watch on them, counseling them, it really involves cost for the organization to take care of these problems of the workers in the workplace. Sabotage is an extreme form of workplace violence instituted to disrupt, destroy or damage equipment, data or a work area. Employee sabotage can range from simple prank-like behaviors to vandalism to computer bombs. Angry covertly and overtly resort to sabotage to get even, to correct a perceived wrong, to take revenge or to make statement to others. So, this is a very extreme behavior which people have to be careful about, which really the organization has to be careful about, to see these types of behavior are not happening in the organization. And like sabotage in its extreme forms may be a very great loss to the group or to the organization per se, when it leads to like damaging equipments or data or data theft, etc., from the organization. So, three types of sabotage target exist, like people, equipment and operations. In sabotaging people, the objective is to destroy the person's career progress, reputation or the work area. The sabotage of equipment or operation involves physically destroying something. So, it really is an act of the person who is bored and not challenged, who who believes like he or she was unfairly treated in the organization, and who wants to get an advantage over a colleague by doing certain things in the organization. So we should be very careful of these type of personalities present in the workplace. Theft is an unauthorized taking, consuming, or transferring of money or goods from the which is owned by the organization. So this definition, we should be careful, like this stealing is not limited only to tangible properties. It could be data, information, and intellectual property could be stolen as well. Like when we are talking of the Steele model, Greenberg and associates believe that the motives underlying theft misbehavior are very complex. These researchers categorize the motives behind theft as being either pro-social, helpful, or antisocial, harmful. So either we steal because we want to help someone, others, or we want to harm others. Sometimes as we want to be helpful also, we steal because we want to help either the organization or certain people or colleagues in the organization. The term steal refers to four motives behind theft like support, thought, even the score, and approval. So what happens, like in sometimes the organization approves the theft, like data theft, like insider trading and all these factors. So what happens over there, manager encourages this type of behavior which is wrong ethically, which should not be done. And when we are talking of like support, like whether we are getting support from the whether we are getting support from the organization to do the theft, whether we are doing it as a part of some needs that are thought in the organization, whether we are trying to even the score, like we want to correct certain wrongs done to us, and whether the organization approves for it or not, what are the consequences that we face as a result of this behavior. All these things will determine the thefts in the organization. Based on this, so these were the discussions, like what are the different types of misbehaviors happening in the workplace, how it happens in the workplace, what are the antecedent consequences and outcomes and of misbehavior, like when you're talking of misbehavior, and how managerial intervention can help to prevent misbehaviors in the workplace. So based on that, the questions for today's discussion are like: define misbehavior, describe different misbehaviors in the organization with suitable examples, write short notes on aggression and violence, and theft with special reference to the Steele model. So thank you, and I hope like this discussion will help us to be aware of the different types of misbehaviors happening in the workplace, to know like who are prone to misbehave and what are the corrective actions to be taken by the managers in the workplace. Thank you.